Hello and welcome to the Tools for the Job webinar as part of the Lasting Impact series. This webinar is all about how the right tech, data and digital can help charities deliver great outcomes. So I'm just going to start off with, this is what we're intending to cover today. Hopefully this is what you're expecting to get out of this. We're going to talk a little bit around technology and digital and how you get the right approach. We're going to talk about software, and then at the end we're going to have a little bit on roadmaps around the big risks, and what you need to do and think about benefits as well. So I'm going to go straight into this. So obviously, just in terms of the people watching this webinar, attendees, what I want to talk about here is the audience, who I think this webinar will be useful for. So if you're within a small charity, it's focused mostly on small charities. This it's not for medium or large size charities. I very much pitched this at the smaller organizations. And I've pitched it at not specific at the IT people, but I've pitched it at people within the organization who have a good understanding of what their organization does, what the organization is trying to achieve, may well be coming to this with a lot less IT knowledge, or perhaps no IT knowledge. So that's what we're hoping to cover today. And in terms of what you're going to get from this today, hopefully what I'm going to give you is a really good understanding of how you can approach technology in a small charity. So I'm going to start with a little bit about myself here, just so you know the background I come from. So I come from a charity background. I've worked for 20 years, over 20 years in charities. I've worked as a CIO at Shelter and Royal British Legion. I've also worked with quite a large number of charities in other capacities. I'm a consultant currently. I've been for about the last year. I've been doing consultancy, working with a broader range of charities, and I'm also deputy chair of the Charity IT Leaders Group. And I'm just going to very briefly mention the Charity IT Leaders Group. If you are in a smaller organisation and you're looking to network with people around technology within the charity sector, it's an absolutely great organisation to get that networking going. So please do just Google that. And also I've just put my LinkedIn address there if you want to look me up. So let's get started with this webinar. And I'm going to start off with what might seem a strange question, but it's really helpful for you to understand what an approach to technology might be. And so I'm starting off with the question is, what is a CTO or CIO, and what do they do? So this is Chief Technology Officer or Chief Information Officer. Typically, large organizations, maybe organizations with 300-400 plus staff, have these people in strategic technology leadership roles. And CTOs and CIOs perform a really valuable function within an organization. And the reason it's interesting to talk about this is because obviously if you're in a smaller organization, it really doesn't make sense to have a CTO or a CIO, simply because you have to be very thoughtful about who you employ and where you get value for money. And a CTO, CIO only really comes into their benefit in a much larger organization. What do they do? So they look at technology, they look at data, they look at digital. Quite often they look at transformation as well, how organizations can really benefit from technology, digital and data, and they can transform to deliver that. And it's also important to think a little bit about what they would focus on. So if you're often when people think about IT, they jump straight to the tactical side of IT. They jump to thinking about, what is it that I need on a day-to-day basis? How can I make sure that my technology is working? They think about laptops, they think about logins, they think about trying to make sure that the website's working on a day-to-day basis. They think about the very practical things. But the thing is, if you're a CIO or a CTO, generally that's not what actually they do. CTOs and CIOs are looking at much more of the longer term approach. And that's all about ensuring that the technology, digital and data approaches are a good fit for your organization. enabling your organization to be as efficient as possible and to find effective ways to deliver on its charitable aims. Now, I've explained all of that because it's important to have a think about what is it you actually need from. Are you looking for making sure that your technology is working? Or is it that you're looking for the longer term? How do you actually get the right technology? Chances are it's both. And during this presentation, I'm going to be covering both of those items and trying to understand how it is you can make sure, first of all, that you've got good technology that works from day to day and you've got a way to support it, but also the longer term approach, making sure that you have a really good technology, data, digital infrastructure that fits what you're trying to do and is efficient and effective. So I'm going to start off with, how do you be your own IT department? How do you reduce those day-to-day IT tasks? And where we're going to start on this is looking at the big picture. Now, there's some really good news here because I'm going to tell you the secret of most CIOs and CTOs, they'll tell you, is it's not about the technology. Their skill really lies in understanding people and in understanding how organizations work. They have some understanding of technology, but the really successful ones really understand how organizations work. And hopefully this is the point where you're smiling to yourself because you're thinking, actually, good news. As a leader in my charity, I understand how my charity works. I may not understand how to configure an email server. I may not understand how to get our website to work, but I do understand how my charity works. And this is what I want to tell you. First of all, I want to give you a bit of a confidence boost and tell you, don't be scared of technology because really it's about understanding how your organization works. And if you can get that right and you can understand that, then you can really make a lot of progress. So let's first of all start with a little bit about your organization. And I'm going to use a phrase here called operating model. You may be familiar with this, but the context I'm going to use it in is thinking a little bit about the processes and the structure of your organization. So by processes, I mean the ways that stuff gets done. And this might be processes involving technology. It might be offline processes that involve writing things down. It might be spreadsheets and Word documents. It might be to do with HR type things, or it might be to do with finance type things. There's a whole bundle of processes you have in your organization. And I'm going to talk about structure. And by structure, I mean how your organization is structured, who the people in the organization are, what their roles and responsibilities are, how they actually deliver what it is that they've been given the remit to deliver. And then the third bit of the operating model that I want to talk about is your customers, your beneficiaries, the people you're trying to help. Now, there'll be a wide range of different charities and a wide range of different ways those charities work who will be watching this webinar. Some of them may be working in the delivery space, service delivery space. So you may be delivering a service on behalf of your local authority or in contract with your local authority. You may be working with specific groups within society. You may be a fairly small organization who perhaps is thinking, perhaps do I even need technology? I might only be needing technology for a small subset, and it may not even involve your beneficiaries. For example, if you're running some sort of clubs or you're running some sort of events at a small scale, perhaps you don't even need technology to serve your beneficiaries. But it's really important to actually think about this high level to start off with. So I'm going to move on because I've now got a little bit of a case study example. And this is looking at a very small charity. Now I'm picturing this small charity perhaps only has 4 or 5 people working in the organization. They've got someone in charge of it. They've got someone who does a sort of administrative role. Maybe they work around finance. They have some HR experience. They do a bit of admin for the organization. There's a partnerships lead. Now this could be, depending on your organization, doing a variety of different things, but perhaps the partnerships lead is all about bringing in funding to the organization, whether it be grant funding or whether it be fundraising from individual giving, which going out raising money from events and things like that. And also, I'm going to say that within this small charity, this very small charity, there's a delivery lead. And the delivery lead is the person in the organization who's responsible for making sure that whatever the outcomes of those charities are, they're actually delivered. I'm going to translate this into normal language. So supposing it's a charity which runs some sort of clubs for children before school, preschool clubs, the delivery lead might be the person who's actually working running that club. Supposing it's a charity which gives advice to people who have issues around drugs or alcohol abuse, the delivery lead might be the person who's coordinating that advice or the person who's actually giving that advice. I'll give you one more example. Supposing it's a charity that helps with people who are trying to live healthier lifestyles. So the delivery lead might be the expert in healthier lifestyles who is producing content which enables people to understand what they can be doing to improve their lifestyle. So what I was trying to do there was just give a very broad overview of a few different types of charity and their structure. Now, hang in there because I am going to get to technology here, but there's a very deliberate reason here that I'm dwelling on what the charity does, because as I said about 5 minutes ago, the secret of any good technology leader is to really understand the problem they're solving, the organization they're working with, what that organization is actually doing, because then that's when you can actually get to really good technology. So now thinking about this, I've written down suppliers here because even though your organization might only be these 4 people that I've mentioned, there's probably some outsourced services that you've got. So most obviously, probably you've got an accountant of some sort, and they may well be using software and technology in some way. You may have some sort of outsourced IT service where you have a company that's able to fix a laptop that gets broken, a company that's able to help out when I don't know, you think your email's not coming through, a company that's going to help you write your website, those sorts of things. You could have outsourced those things. But also you might have things that are in-house. So you might have decided, actually, I really want to have an IT expert. Perhaps you might find your finance HR admin person is also pretty good on IT, and they will also be helping out. So you may be doing it in-house, outsourced, some mixture. Now, the third bit I wanted to talk about here in my operating models is how do people communicate? How do they raise income? How do you deliver your charitable aims? And how do you communicate externally with your customers? Now, there's a reason why I picked on these 4 items, because there's all sorts of things charity does, but there were 4 things that I really wanted to concentrate on. And communicating internally, pretty straightforward if you're only a small 4-person organization. A lot of it might be verbal, but you'll probably have some sort of email system. Raising income, it might be completely offline and non-technology based. It might just be simply about going around with a bucket, raising money that way, getting coins in. Unlikely in this day and age, because most people use contactless, and you'll get less and less money in your income. And if you are using contactless terminals, then this is when you really need to think all about how we'll use technology there. Charitable aims, this is probably the critical one. Some aims of your charity could be delivered in ways that don't use technology, but other aims of your charity can be a lot more effective with technology. And going through these things I've mentioned there, the first one, if you're using technology, is really about efficiency. It's about how can you make your organization efficient in terms of how it communicates. The next one, how you raise income. The technology element is about how can you raise more income. The reason you'd invest in technology is because it would enable you to be better at raising that income. The third one, delivering your charitable aims, is about effectiveness. This is about how can you use technology to make it so you can more effectively serve the people you're trying to help. And then finally, I've put this one at the bottom, communicating with your customers. it may or may not be an issue for you, but there may be areas where you want to be a combination of those things I've just mentioned. Effectiveness, efficiency, and giving better service could all be bundled up in communication with your customers. And depending on the sort of organization you are, that will depend on what customer means to you, but also it will depend on whether that's actually important. So I'm going to move on now, and I want you to think a little bit about your own charity. At this point, it might make sense if you're watching this, you might want to just click pause, and you might want to now write down what you think your charity looks like in terms of its operating model, what it thinks look like, what its processes are, what its structure is, who the key suppliers are, what's insourced and what's outsourced. And it's really good to write this down, because you'll then have the most basic operating model of this is what my charity actually does. You can go to town if you want, and you can design this up in some nice graphics package and draw it out. There's if you Google it, there's lots of examples and templates on how you can draw out your operating model and get a really nice picture of it. The reason you might want to do that is because it's a really good way of illustrating to others what your organization does and illustrating to new people when they join the organization. But even if you don't do that, you can just write it down on a bit of paper, and it's going to be helpful as we go through the rest of this webinar if you have that to hand, so as you can understand what you're trying to do. So moving on. This is just talking here briefly about what I said about being efficient, about enabling you to raise more funds, and being effective. And the reason I have said that now probably 3 times, I think, is because there is no getting around this. Technology is expensive. There's license costs, there's the cost of actually keeping it working and supporting it, and there's the cost of making sure it matches what your organization does as your organization changes. That's an important one, because often when organizations are formed, they get the right technology for their organization. 5 years down the line, the organization has changed, and there is a cost associated with changing that technology. And so the combination of all those costs makes technology really expensive. And that's why I'm going to say only get what you need, not what you want. Now, how do you think about that? If you're a larger organization, there's something that larger organizations quite often use, which I'm not going to go into in great detail for this audience, but I want to mention. And it's this word that I've used right at the top of this slide, which is maturity. Because larger organizations think a lot about how mature do they want to be in terms of the technology and in terms of their approach to data and digital. And this is a combination of the people, the way those people use technology, the processes, and that technology. And some organizations will have a need to be exceptionally advanced in this area, because it will be part of the way they do business. It will enable them to be efficient. It will enable them to be sector leading. I'm going to switch to a non-charity sector example to help bring this to life. So if you think of an organization that has high technology maturity, you might think of an organization like Amazon. Now, literally, the entire model of Amazon is driven by technology, from when you order something, whether it's on your mobile device or on your laptop, to how it's actually, the order is processed, how the payments are taken, how it's delivered. If you have a problem with customer service, how the customer service is delivered. And there's an operating model there all around technology, which works across multiple countries, across multiple currencies, with multiple customer groups, that takes into account business to consumer, business to business, that takes into account the entire supplier model. How do they source products? How do those products end up on the website? They have an exceptionally mature technology model. But if I go right to the other end of the scale, and I'm going to imagine now someone who runs a ballet club. Now, their ballet club only has, let's say, 20 people involved who turn up for their lessons. 20 children turn up to ballet lessons. And really the core product of the ballet club is teaching kids ballet. And so there's no technology maturity needed there. Perhaps there's something around sending out emails when the times of the lessons change. Perhaps there's a need for a website so that people can find out about the club, but the maturity level required is very low. I'm going to pause there again, because what I want to go back to is the line at the bottom of this slide: only get what you need, not what you want. The ballet club could spend an awful lot of money trying to make themselves as mature as Amazon in terms of technology, giving themselves online booking systems, making it so anyone at any stage can find out exactly what's happening in the ballet lessons, enabling offline chats with ballet tutors, enabling people to set up their ballet journey as they learn ballet. But really, that would be about things you want rather than things you need. There's something that's used in Agile quite often, which is called the prioritization method, the Moscow method, which is all about must have, should have, could have, and would like to have, or won't have. Sometimes the W changes sometimes. And generally, whenever technology people are prioritizing things, they think in those terms. What are the absolute must-haves, things that you really definitely need to have, otherwise it just doesn't work. Things that it should have because they're things that are really going to make it work well. And things that it could have, things that, well, it'd be nice to have it, but it's really not gonna change things a lot. And then the things would like to have or won't have, which are probably just cosmetic, which could make a big difference, but really they're not that important. So when you're thinking about technology and maturity, it's really important to not get caught up in thinking you need to have every software product out there. My next few slides are about software, and I want you to bear that in mind as I'm talking about the software, because what lots of organizations, small and large, do is they get carried away by shiny things. They will go away and they will see the latest bit of software that does something amazing, and they will be wowed by it, and they'll be like, oh my God, they've said it can do X, Y, Z, and this is really what my organization needs. And what you really need to think about when you're on a tight budget is it actually what your organization needs, or is it just what you think you want? So I'm going to talk about software and apps and operating systems here at this point. So this is now getting things a bit more practical. We've talked about the big picture. We've talked about operating models of your organization. We've talked about what it is your organization does. Now what I want to move on to is matching the technology to what your organization does. Really what I'm giving you here today is I'm giving you a being a CIO for dummies type exercise. If you want to know quick tips, how can you take on some of the tools of being a technology leader in a small organization? And we're starting with the big picture. How can you make sure you've got the right technology? And so we're moving on to software now. And just a short bit on definitions. I've started off with this question, what is software as a service? Because this is something that's really important. Some of you will know what this is, but I did just say this was going to be something like CIO for dummies, being a technology for dummies, because I'm not saying you are a dummy. You're very smart, probably, people listening to this, especially in terms of what your organization's doing. But for those who don't know what software as a service is, it's been a transformative thing in the world of technology. In the old days, people used to have to go and buy a bit of software and you would install it on a computer, and it was up to you to keep that bit of software up to date and make sure it was working. And trust me, this was the bane of the lives of IT departments. That world has changed. And the reason I've got a picture of a mobile phone in the corner there to the side of the screen is because this is probably the easiest way for you to think of software as a service, because literally every single one of those little apps on your phone is a software as a service app. What it means is that you don't have to worry about updating it. You don't have to worry about supporting it. You don't have to worry about making sure it's running correctly. All you have to do is have it on your device, whether it's a laptop or a mobile phone, and it will automatically be updated for you in the way that you know with your phone when it says there's updates to run and they just run in the background. And you'll find that over time it gets better. And so this isn't just about updates around, I don't know, security or fixing bugs or something like that. It's also about updates that make that software get better and better and better as time progresses. So I'm going to give you an example around mapping technology on your phone. Everyone hopefully remembers there was mapping technology, but over years, mapping technology has got better and better and better. There's been things like, I don't know, Street View thrown in there. There's been like satellite images thrown in there. There's all of the functionality all around using it as a sat nav. That's all got better and better. All of those things are upgrades that have happened incrementally over many, many years. And this is what software as a service is. It's something where the upgrades just come to you automatically. You don't have to think about it. And generally, the way that people pay for software as a service is on a per user per month basis. This has made budgeting so much easier for technology teams because rather than paying for software as an asset, something you buy, instead what you're doing is you're renting it. You're paying for a service. So you might be paying £5 per person per month for a bit of software, might be a typical thing, or it might be if it's that's for quite a basic bit of software. If it's a more complex piece of software that meets a very niche area, you might find you're paying £50 per person per month. And that software, you can normally in the software as a service world, you can just subscribe to it on a monthly basis. Sometimes you'll get tied into a longer contract. But the great thing about software as a service is it gives you flexibility and it enables you to outsource so much of your IT as part of what you're doing. Okay, that was software as a service. Now, I'm going to talk to you about the 3 types of software in your organization. Administrative corporate software, software for communicating and engaging with your customers, whoever they may be, and software for serving your beneficiaries. Now, hopefully, you're thinking, this is something like he was talking around operating models, and that is very much intentional because the software you have will match your operating model, and it's really helpful to break it down into those 3 areas. Let's start with administrative. Now, administrative, this is the day-to-day stuff. And I put some obvious examples of administrative type software here. You might have finance software, which generally your accountant would be able to advise you on. But there's products like Xero, like QuickBooks, which people use to manage their accounts in small organizations. Around HR and payroll, again, do you need this system yourself, or maybe will this be something you outsourced to perhaps your accountant, or you do some outsourcing around your HR? There are systems out there that do this. There's a whole variety of things like Workday, which again, software as a service products, which you can go out and buy. But you'll need to consider for both finance and HR, what are you doing with this software? Are you getting something in that you're paying for, or are you getting something that your outsourced service will provide and is packaged as part of that outsourced service around finance, HR, payroll? Now, something which you will probably do internally, though, is your office environment. 2 big ones here. The Microsoft version, which is called M365, was called Microsoft Office. It was called Office 365. It's changed its names many times. And there's an equivalent from Google. There are other options around here, but predominantly the ones that people use are Microsoft and Google. And one of the reasons that people in the charity sector use Microsoft and Google is because there's some really good charity pricing on these. This next slide here, what I'm going to tell you a little bit about is the pricing. So this is Microsoft pricing. And this is just taken straight from their website, but it's to give you an idea of what you can get. And if your eyes are drawn to the numbers, like they should be, because that's the way these slides are designed, you will notice it says £2.30 per user per month, or £4.20 per user per month. And you'll see underneath that, it says annual commitment. So this was the software as a service model I was talking about before, where you have a per user per month fee and with Microsoft, they like you to have an annual commitment to this. So even though you're paying per month, you've got an annual contract for this, and it's an annual contract for the users you buy. There's 3 plans here. The first one you'll probably really like because you'll notice there is no price stuck next to it. That's the free one. But obviously, because it's free, there are things you don't get. What you don't get is you don't get the installed versions of apps. You get versions of Microsoft Word, Excel, etc., that you can use through a browser. The £2.30 version, you then get the installed versions of those, which you can use. And you also get, as part of all of this, you get the Teams functionality, which can be really important and helpful for having meetings online. Generally, you'll be used to having meetings either on Teams, on Zoom, or on Google Meet, are the 3 most popular ones. If you go for the Microsoft package, you get Teams thrown in as part of that. Even in the free version, you get Teams thrown in as part of that. £2.30 per user per month. You get the installed versions. If you go up to the £4.20 per user per month, that includes security features. There's some things down the bottom. You can see the bottom 3 ones added on there. There are Intune, Purview, and Microsoft Defender. All of those are around data control, data retention, preventing data loss, and ensuring cybersecurity. So all of those 3 are around compliance, which I'm going to come to at the end of this webinar, talking about compliance. That's a bit of a deep dive on the Microsoft side of things. It's only fair that I give the Google side of things as well. There's other ones out there, as I say, but I just wanted to give examples. You may already know all of this, but it's useful to spot. So similarly, Google has a very similar per user per month. They've helpfully put in these slides the percentage off standard pricing you get. And this is where I wanted to point out why charities often use one of these suites, because charities get a really good discount. The Microsoft and Google make very little money on the charity licenses here, because they make their money on the corporate licenses they sell to other people. But as a charity, you get very, very good discounts, 75% off, as you can see on Business Standard here with Google. And you get a free version as well with Google. The big difference with Google is you don't get installed versions of bits of software. You can see they've got their nice little set of icons up the top there: Gmail, G Drive, Calendar, Chat, Docs, Sheets, all of these things. Google Meet there, I can see there, all these things which are bits of Google software, but generally if you're using a laptop, these are not installed versions. These are versions that you use via the web. As you go up through the different versions, you get more cloud storage. That's more things you can store. Just to mention briefly, the very first one, 100 terabytes across all users. That's shared across all users. Whereas the next ones along are per user, 2 terabytes, 5 terabytes in those 2 middle, Business Standard and Business Plus. Really, as an organization, unless you're storing videos, that will be more than enough for you. As you get into images and within documents and videos within documents, you can get up to higher file sizes, but you'll be going nowhere near that amount if you're just about text in spreadsheets and text in documents and those types of things. So that was a very quick overview of administrative software. I'm just going to go back 3 slides now there just to talk about here. So I just talked about the type of software you'll have for finance, for HR, for payroll, and for internal use within your organization, for communications. All of these things are the type of things which you would generally give to an IT person within your organization to organize. You may be able to do these yourself to procure them. If you just gain a little bit of knowledge, just buying some licenses for Google Suite or Microsoft 365 and getting them set up is fairly straightforward. They're all software as a service, so they're all supported, so you don't actually need to support them. But if you do start getting more and more licenses, it gets really complicated with Microsoft and Google because you have more and more licenses to manage. And similarly, you give yourself quite an invoicing task as well to try and manage all the invoices coming in and make sure you're matching them. The way that you're invoiced for these They will just come normally as through a credit card or through a direct debit, but matching it all up can get quite complicated. So that's just a quick warning there. So I'm going to fast forward now to the next set. So said administrative first of all. Next one, communicating and engaging with your customers. This is again about some of the basics here. And you may already have got these things sorted and not be worried about them, but there's some bread and butter stuff. You need a domain name. You'll need a hosting platform for a website. There are many all-in-one options out there for small businesses, small charities. You would be very well advised to take advantage of one of these all-in-one options, because really this is not where you want your this is probably not where you want your skills to be in trying to understand how your website works. The only reason it might be is if your website enables your business and is critical to your business. Most small organizations, their website is static. It's just a shop front for their organization. It's a set of pages that outlines what their organization does. But you might find you also have all sorts of features and functionality in your website. If you're distributing knowledge or information or running events through it, then you might be doing different things, in which case you might need a bit more expertise here. But if it's just about a shop front, a brochure for your business, really go for one of the all-in-one options, which are going to help you. There's companies like Cloudflare, GoDaddy, WordPress, who have some, there's lots of others, you can Google them, but they have some really good tools to enable you to create your own website. And you should only be looking to spend a few £100s a year on this. This isn't something to be spending thousands or tens of thousands on. If you're a small organization, you can get it for reasonably cheaply. And it should just be a sort of a hygiene factor, get it done and make sure it works, and then don't worry about it. I've also put at the bottom of this slide, what is SEO? SEO is search engine optimization. And the reason that it's important is it's all about making sure that you're discoverable. I'm sure if you run a small charity, you'll probably get an awful lot of spam from people saying they can improve your SEO. It's important to have good SEO, but it depends again on your business model. If you're mostly working through word of mouth, if you've got a small set of people you help, a lot less important. If you're an online business, an online charity that's trying to broaden your customer base, SEO becomes quite important, because you want to make sure that if people search for keywords, that your organization is one of the top organizations they find when they're searching on Google. You can speak to specialists around this. Again, not something I'd recommend you become an expert in yourself, SEO, but you can go out and find organizations or specialists who will help you improve your SEO. Don't spend much money on this. Really, it's not worth spending much money on it, but you should be able to, with a very small amount of spend, make yourself a lot more visible on the internet. I'm going to go on to another type of software. CRMs can be really important, and they can have a lot of different a lot of different uses within an organization. I've mentioned two CRMs here, Salesforce and Microsoft D365. I've also mentioned a whole bundle of other ones. The really important thing about a CRM is just thinking it enables you to keep track of the contacts with your charity and the interactions you have with those contacts. Most organizations will probably want to have a CRM quite quickly. It can work as your address book, and it can help you. If you're really into technology, you can do some pretty smart tricks actually to avoid using a CRM if you're small. And there are other ways around it, using Excel spreadsheets, and even if you're bold, using AI with your Excel spreadsheets. More on that later. But for most organizations, a CRM will be a simple solution to enable you to keep track of your contacts. Some of them, like Salesforce, have great not-for-profit offers, and Microsoft does as well. Salesforce offers 10 free licenses right from day one for any charity. All charitable organizations can get these. Then you go through, there's something called the Power of Us hub with Salesforce. You can go there and you can apply for your 10 free licenses. And it gives you the basic functionality of Salesforce, which if you're a corporate organization, you'll be paying a lot of money for, but as a charity, you can get those 10 free licenses for free. Moving on, this is very much related to CRM. You may well be doing emails, marketing emails. Again, this is an area of software you'll need to think about for your organization. Often this would be included in your CRM, but the ability to actually send out emails to large groups of customers, whether they be people you're helping, people you're raising funds from, or people who you're partnering with, it's important that you have ways to send email in bulk. If you just try sending it from your email system, pretty rapidly you'll find that you get blacklisted and you go and end up in people's junk and spam folders. If you use some email automation marketing software, which may be built into a CRM, you can make sure those emails get through. You can track how those emails are actually performing with people, and you can automate the process to save you time. I'm just going to pause there and take a glass of water. So the next area is serving your beneficiaries. If you remember back to my slides, I talked a little bit about administrative functions, communicating with people, and serving your beneficiaries. This is very much about making yourself more effective. You may decide that you don't need technology at all to serve your beneficiaries, and that is completely reasonable for many, many charities. So really important to think about your operating model and if this is something you need or it's just something you want. I've given an example of some of the things you might be using technology for if you're serving your beneficiaries. Case management, by case management, I mean keeping track of the work you're doing with people. So for example, I'll give you I mentioned charities that work with people who are needing help with alcohol and drug related problems. So you may decide that you want to keep track of people you're talking to and the advice you've given them. A case management tool can be absolutely essential for that. And it will help you also report back to funders. It will also help you keep track of the work you're doing and make things a lot easier. A lot of contracts actually insist that you have to have a technology to do this, to keep track. It will also make sure that you're safeguarding people's data effectively. You may need events management software. CRM I've talked about. Sharing knowledge I've put down there because that's a specific use case that some charities may have. Some charities, their operating model may be all about helping people through sharing information online. If you do this, then you'll probably have specific software you use, which may be learning management software. It may be content management software that enables you to publish knowledge in a particular area and share it with the people you're trying to help. Final bit here. Do I need AI? Now, I had to throw this slide in here. You might be thinking, my God, I can't even deal with everything you just talked about for the last 20 minutes. This has been really content heavy. Please don't throw AI at me. But you can find that you can benefit. And people, if you're a smaller organization, you may find that you're already using things like the free version of ChatGPT or the free version of Bing Enterprise Chat within your organization. That's the Microsoft version. You might find Copilot. You might find that you're using other AI systems. They can be really helpful. There are some very simple use cases. I'm going to give one that's really helpful. Minuting meetings is probably the simplest go-to use case that organizations can find. There's some really good tools that if you have online meetings using Teams or Zoom or Google Meet, that you can use tools that will take minutes and summarize what's happening in those meetings. And they can be exceptionally good and save you on your administrative resource. So you must think about whether you want to use those. Some of them are free, some of them you pay some money for. Generally, actually, the ones you pay money for, they're still quite expensive. Just as an example, if you're using Office 365, there's something called Teams Premium. You can get a license for that. I think it's about £5 per person per month, and that just enables you to create notes straight away. You can go for the more comprehensive Copilot version as part of Office 365, which is a lot more expensive, and that gives you a lot more functionality all around AI. Probably the biggest thing to think about here is compliance and data leakage, and making sure that you understand where your data is going. If you're using the free tools, chances are you're training those models as you're using them. And so the information you're giving when you're asking it questions, or if you're uploading information, is going into those large language models. And you want to think, do you really want to be doing that? If you're using the paid tools, you have the ability to prevent that information being shared more widely. And that's a big reason why you might want to use the paid for version. But broadly speaking, I would definitely recommend that you think about how you use AI and be very cautious. Make sure you've got taken some external advice and got a policy before you go too heavily down that line. Right. This is stop and think time. I've given you a huge amount of content. And we've been going probably for about 45, 50 minutes now. And so I just want to recap. I've talked to you all about what it is that a CIO or a CTO does in an organization. I've talked to you about how you can take on some of that role. I've talked to you about thinking about the short-term, medium, and long-term approach to technology in your organization. The short-term things will be around keeping your technology working, making sure that you've got a way to actually support it on a day-to-day basis. The medium and long-term things, I've talked to you a lot more about those. I've talked to you about making sure you've thought about how do you get the right technology for your organization. I've talked to you about maturity and taking steps and not doing it all at once and thinking about how you can get there. It's really important not to be completely overwhelmed by all of this and do nothing, because what's the most useful thing with technology is to take small steps, to think about how you're going to get to that improved situation around your technology, whether it's around automating the way you use some functionality around your website, or automating your events, or automating how you interact with your beneficiaries, or automating how you communicate with people, or even if it's just as simple as using an AI tool just to take minutes in your meetings. Take small steps. Don't give yourself the headache of thinking you have to have a huge grand plan that you do everything at once. The world of technology talked for years and years about waterfall versus agile, and waterfall was about doing everything according to a plan and having knowing exactly not just where you were going, but what your path was right from the start. Agile was much more about being able to flex as you go and flex to your needs and learn as you go, test and learn as you go. And what I would strongly recommend to you in your approach here is that you follow an agile approach where you test and learn and trial and do things that you can test your software, get it right. Don't spend huge amounts of time, effort, and money getting it right first go. Just try a small amount to try and get something that will enable you to take those small steps. And if you're doing that, that's how you will get to hopefully your tropical island paradise here. So that was your pause. We're not midway through. We're about 70% of the way through here. That was your pause, because now I just want to talk a little bit more on the how do you actually get there? What does that practically mean in your organization? And I also want to talk about some of the risks along the way, and then finally the benefits you'll see. But first of all, how do you get there? So short, medium, and long-term goals are really important. Make sure that even if you're not having your everything mapped out right from the start, you do at least have some sort of a broad brush roadmap that says, here's where I am now, Here's where I think I want to be in 6 months. Here's a year from now. Here's 2 years from now. And this is very much, I've talked about your organization's business plan here, because if you're thinking about strategy and roadmaps, chances are you will have thought about this for your organization. Think about your technology roadmap alongside your organization's business plan. The final bullet point there is all about that maturity. Build slow, iterate. Risks and compliance. Now, I phrased these 4 areas under risk and compliance, but you could put them in a number of different places. They're the sorts of things which organizations worry about a lot. People, their stomachs tense up. They get really nervous when they hear about cyber and data loss and business continuity and supplier failure, cost overruns with IT things. These are all things which are the reasons perhaps you might think you need technology expertise and you need external advice. And you may well be right that you do need technology expertise and external advice. But I'm going to try and give you a very, very quick rundown of what you need to be concerned about in these 4 areas so as you can make your own decision about what advice you need on them. First one, business continuity and cyber. Now, the reason that cybersecurity is a problem and is important, there are 2 simple things. Number one, enabling you to continue to do business so as you don't have an interruption to your business. And number 2, making sure you don't lose data. When you use software as a service products, you have one huge advantage. You've basically pushed a lot of that risk onto the supplier, or you might think you have, because whilst you've pushed the IT risk onto them, you haven't pushed the business continuity risk onto them. That business continuity risk will always sit with you. And what I mean by that is, supposing you're heavily reliant on your finance system, your Office 365 or Google Suite, your CRM, what happens if the supplier lets you down and it goes off? We all know, because it's fairly high profile, when there's a big cyber incident, whether it's with airline booking systems or whether it's with Office 365 or whether it's with some major system like, I don't know, Twitter or Instagram, if it goes down, it's very, very high profile. You need to think, even if you feel you've got rid of that risk to your supplier through software as a service, you need to think about, what are you going to do in that situation? How do you continue running your business so you don't just have to tell everyone, I'm sorry, IT says no, it's down? Have you got a way that you can move to backups using paper? Is there a way you can work offline without the technology? There are accreditations which you may need in terms of cyber. There's something called Cyber Essentials and there's something called Cyber Essentials Plus. These, for government-related contracts, tend to be quite important. Cyber Essentials is the National Cybersecurity Centre's accreditation for an organization to make sure that they're following basic cyber procedures. Cyber Essentials Plus is the accredited version of it that's externally accredited. It's worth looking up and trying to understand, because if you're in government contracts, first of all, you'll need it. But even if you're not, it's a good way to consider, are you ticking all the boxes all around cybersecurity? Going to move on now to data loss. This is all around GDPR and trying to make sure that when you take the data of people you're helping or people you're working with, your customers, you are really safeguarding that data and you have understood what the consent you have from those people to use that data is. So we'll think about marketing and we'll think about people you're helping. Let's start with people you're helping. People you're helping may often be vulnerable, and you want to make sure that you are looking after their data in the best way you possibly can. And so it's really important to consider, are you using systems that are secure? Have you considered where the data is being hosted? Is it hosted within the UK, within the EU, within the US? Is it hosted outside of those regions? If it's hosted outside those regions, you may well consider it's going to be a problem there in terms of your compliance with GDPR regulations. you should really think very carefully all around where that data is hosted. If the data is in systems where you're signing up to software as a service systems, again, think very carefully. Do you trust that supplier? Are you trusting them? Because you're putting your data in there, and you're therefore putting your reputation there. So make sure you've trusted them. It's really important that you spend a lot of time thinking about data loss, because data loss is, if you're holding people's data, it is absolutely critical. And moving on to now marketing data, you want to be really careful about how you're marketing to people, making sure you follow GDPR regulations there, because a lot of that is around consent and making sure that people have consented to you sending the marketing information. So I'm not going to go into detail on that, because that's a whole other webinar on its own. But business continuity and cyber and data loss are all things which you really need to make sure you've got a good understanding on, and probably worth getting further information on those ones. The bottom two risks there I put in because they're heavily associated with IT. Supplier failure. What if you're the person who's the IT company that's supplying your technology fails, whether it's because they're developing something for you, or because they're just one of those suppliers I've talked about around business continuity? How do you actually deal without it? You need to make sure you have a plan. And the biggest one at the bottom, cost overruns. If you are getting technology built for you, it is very, very expensive, and it is risky. And you want to avoid that. And you want to make sure that you're very careful about how much money you're spending and what you're contracting people to do, because the cost can add up so quickly. Generally, in the world of configuring technology, it is exceptionally easy to end up in a world of £1,000 a day rates. And it's exceptionally easy to end up in projects where you're being quoted for 30 or 50 days or something like that. And that sort of money in a small charity doesn't go very far at all. So the biggest thing I have in terms of advice there is keep it very, very simple. If you're a small organization, really think about what value for money you're getting there. And do you need to customize things for your organization? In most occasions, the answer will be no, I just need to have it out of the box. Because the more you customize, the more things cost. Finally, I have one big question for you all. Is all of this worth it? You can spend a huge amount of money on technology. You can spend a huge amount of money on supporting that technology. You can spend a huge amount of time pulling together plans on what you actually want that technology to do. But you have to ask yourself this question: why am I doing it? And this now is just really back to the things you will know as someone running an organization or in a leadership position in an organization. I don't need to tell you this. This is reminding you what you know. Objectives, KPIs, understanding the benefits you're getting from things are really important. So set your strategic objectives. Make sure that you have metrics to understand how those objectives are being delivered. Understand that the benefits that the software is bringing you, and understand how those benefits align with what you actually want to achieve as an organization. Give yourself a splash of cold water on your face in the morning and think, just a sec, why are we doing this? Technology is the easiest thing in the world to go down a rabbit hole and lose sight of the big picture and end up spending lots and lots and lots of money, but you don't really know why it's there. So when I talked about roadmaps, really important, your technology roadmap is aligned with your organizational roadmap. On this slide, really important that your technology objectives are lined up with your KPIs and with the benefits you expect to get. Keeping track of your costs all around IT is so, so important. And that is where I'm going to leave it. And any questions that anyone has, we can cover, or I also just want to say, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I put the QR code up there. You can just use that. If you want to find more about where I talk generally with tech experts all around issues like I've talked about today, There's also a regular podcast I do purely focused on the charity sector, and there's lots of interesting things you'll find out. So look out for that one. Thank you very much for your time today. I really hope you've enjoyed it.